to pick up on the small nuances that sighted people may pick up on just simply through sight. If we just use the very, the gateway to getting a job, which is an interview. The person who's blind has to overcome so many of their own issues in terms of social interaction that a sighted person just automatically understands. And I'll use something simple here. Oftentimes when you receive job coaching, it's about maintaining eye contact with the person that you're speaking with. Well, how does a blind person maintain eye contact? Obviously, a person who's totally blind is not going to maintain eye contact. But then, are there ways in which individuals who are blind could be trained in terms of the same way that sighted individuals are trained to perform well in an interview setting? If you can't maintain eye contact, what other kind of substitutes are available to make the person who is sighted that you're interviewing with feel more comfortable, just feel more comfortable with you socially, but also feel more comfortable with you in the sense that if I really give you this job, are you going to perform well at it? Are you going to represent our organization well? Is your blindness going to get in the way of you being able to interact socially with other individuals? That's an area of accessibility, those soft issues outside of the technology that I think are so critical for future training, future education in helping the blind to get a better employment opportunity.
I just got some good news. Someone that said the link works, by the way, so I think we're streaming live. Nobody freak out. So thank you for that, Dr. Moranville. And I think you and Brian and Amir raised great points about the social side of the equation when we talk about employment, and how that might be overlooked in many of the training and vocational workshops that many people with disabilities go through. Keeping eye contact or having a substitute gesture for that. For example, I happen to know that one way of showing attentiveness is to, lean forward in your seat a little bit. That's to show, I'm listening, I'm interested, things like that. But I digress. Ryan?
Yeah, I think the proverbial nail has been hit on the head very hard at this point. A couple things that I would add maybe, and some of this, again, is things that we don't like to talk about much. One thing I think in the U.S. in particular, we don't ever talk about that there are a lot of social programs in place that support people with disabilities, and in particular, people with visual disabilities, and those are really good and really needed. So I'm not suggesting negative things, but they also sometimes provide a little bit of a financial disincentive for some people to work. And I say that just from people that I've known in the past who were getting those assistance programs, and they didn't really have a lot of incentive to go look for a job. That may not have paid very well because they were actually going to get more money and resources from the social program. So I think we may need to look at that and just be aware that that can be a barrier. I think the other area is stepping back from the social things that have already been discussed, which I think are very true. We may even want to look a little further back into upbringing, family life when someone's growing up, primary, grade school, up through college. What are they being taught by their families, and as far as teaching some of those social etiquettes and things that will come into play later, self-confidence skills, self-advocacy skills. Those are things that in some families may be taught well, and that a lot of times depends on the parent or guardian or whoever is raising that child. Those are things that are usually taught and ingrained in us very early, And if they're not taught, if those skills are not taught, then that can end up having an impact later with those social challenges that people face. So I think that's an area too. And really just looking at the age, the population of who are hiring people. Generally in companies, the people that are making hiring decisions are, oftentimes in an older age bracket. And so what they've been exposed to for their entire lives, or growing up especially, was the perception that a visually impaired person was not very capable, because that was before much of this technology, which is still so new, really became prevalent. So they have that factor of what their perception has always been, unless someone has changed that perception. And usually that happens through personal connection, personal knowing of someone who is visually impaired. So I think we a lot of times forget that we're fighting sometimes a battle of perceptions that have been there for decades in someone's mind, and we have to have an uphill battle to change those things. So I think those are just a couple of kind of different things that are not maybe the heavy hitters of this topic, but still can definitely play a role into things.
No, definitely. Now, to the gentlemen who haven't gone yet and answered this specific question, I'll leave it up to you to decide to jump in if you feel like answering that. And if no one does, I'd like to get them to the next question just for the sake of time. So JJ, Michael, do you guys would like to take a stab at answering that question, or completely?
Just quickly.
Yep.
I just noticed sometimes there's a lot of unnecessary roadblocks that are created when it comes to employment. For instance, the job itself might be completely accessible to someone, but a company will have an inaccessible screening test on their website, or an inaccessible coding test. These little things like that end up becoming deal breakers for someone when you have to spend all this time trying to get around an accommodation that's really unnecessarily put there.
I think that's a great point. And one I think that goes overlooked in the barrier to employment, because people look at it and say, oh, well, we've done this much. Do we have to, bother with this small detail when, sometimes the proof is often in those details that will turn a person off or automatically exclude them from a certain opportunity. Michael?
Yeah. I think all I really want to say is that, look, we have to all admit that being blind or having a particular disability is harder than not having one. We can't ignore that fact, and we do all need to work harder at that, and we need to learn that from an extremely young age, and we need to learn what we're good at and what we're not good at. So searching for jobs where we definitely know we will be able to make a contribution to society. As a young child, parents should be teaching their children how they can be contributing to society in a meaningful way. And also, I guess the point is delegation and confidence and independence is very important, especially for the blind. I mean, I'm sure, like others on this panel, run a company where, I don't do absolutely everything. I manage the thing, but I'm always delegating to people who can do a job better than me, signing forms and all that kind of stuff. That's never going to be accessible because, there will be, it depends on, as culture changes and technology in the mainstream changes, obviously we'll start, we have online signing and things like that. That's fine, but that's not an accessibility thing. That's actually a mainstream change. And, when that happens, that'll be great. And we'll make sure that is accessible. But at the end of the day, if we want to succeed, we need to be the decision makers. We need to do what we are capable of, which is thinking and making decisions and doing things like that. And then, not being scared to delegate out if possible.
Thank you, Michael. And Sunish, do you have anything to add?
I just want to quickly add, of course, what has been said so far is about awareness and attitudes, in the society, which is external to us and which is somewhat beyond our control, but not completely beyond our control. But the main third key point I would add to that is experience, because, and this is where I give my shameless plug for Project StarFish, is that where the experience of our members is making a big impact, when they're looking for employment. Because at Project StarFish, our members get to experience such a variety of to work with a variety of companies, both small entrepreneurs, startup companies, medium-sized companies, in variety of roles, and look at the business from a the owner's hat or the entrepreneur's hat. That gives a completely new perspective, gives them the confidence, so that bringing that experience to really give that extra edge to whatever situation we are in today. Thank you.
Yep, great points. Now, gentlemen, I wanted to switch gears a little bit to adaptive technology and the industry of adaptive technology moving forward specifically. In the last 10 years or so, we've seen a large shift from, we've seen quite a large shift from, your large players in adaptive technology kind of being superseded a bit by universal access by major corporations, Apple, Microsoft, Google, for example. And I just wanted to know, what do you guys see on the horizon? If there was one thing you see on the horizon, say, this is going to be that new thing that's going to shift the landscape of adaptive technology in the next 3 to 5 years, or there's going to be one segment of technology that's going to really be where it's at for accessibility, where would that be? Can we start with Michael?
I'm not really sure. I tend to never really think that far into the future myself. I personally sort of think it's already sort of happened. I'm not so sure that something's going to happen in the next little while. I think it really happened with things like the iPhone. That I think it really, made an extraordinarily big leap for us as blind people, at least, because obviously we had talking mobiles and things before then, but just giving us much more access to mainstream tools and other things like that. I think the iPhone made a very big change, and of course, obviously with the touchscreen and everything like that, giving us a new modality as well. No, I think it really just is waiting for more and more mainstream companies to build accessibility into their products. Obviously we're always waiting for the wonderful day when we can go to the shop and pick up a Windows computer and just use it straight out of the box. Microsoft is obviously working towards that goal, but as it's always been, times are slow, and we'll see. But then at the same time, I want to say that doesn't at all discount the fact that there needs to be a competitive environment in terms of innovation, etc. There's accessibility, but you've got to innovate in that area too, and everyone does it slightly different. So it's great that we have a choice of many different adaptive technologies around, but at the same time though, it's at a minimum great to be able to just, walk down to an Apple shop or whatever and just grab that Mac and be able to use it straight out of the box. And it'd be great if we could also see that Microsoft products as well.
Yep. And how about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think if I knew the exact answer, that would be great. I wish I had a crystal ball here. And I like what Michael said. I agree about the competitive nature, that's what drives innovation. And I love being able to use an Apple device straight out of the box as well. And so I think a couple of things that I think are really going to change some things, maybe or hopefully, is around some of the wireless technologies, the low power Bluetooth type of things that are starting to come out, the iBeacon technology that Apple's working with. Some of that stuff I think can be really impactful for navigation. Let's say, if I, as a blind person, and am in an airport, which I'm in quite often, and I want to know exactly what shops are around me and what stores are around me and where the nearest restrooms are and those sort of things, that low bandwidth or low power wireless technology, I think, has some avenues to help that. So I think that can be really good. The indoor navigation is where we still lack a lot as visually impaired people. We have the GPS, and which is fantastic for getting to the right place, but then what do we do once we get there? How do we know what's in our environment? How do we know what stores are around us and what offices are around us? And so I hope some of this wireless technology will kind of break through and help us gain access to some of those barriers. It's sort of like the last mile or last mile to the door thing they talk about in fiber technology. We can get to the building, but then we have to get that last little bit in there. And so hopefully that's going to really come about in the next few years.
Thank you, Ryan. How about you, JJ?
I think one of the really important things, and it relates to what Ryan was just talking about, is looking at the advancement of connected devices, the Internet of Things. In the past, when a blind person especially wanted something to be accessible, you had to do that by generally making it talk, whether it was a clock or a calculator or a microwave. And these ended up being very specialized, niche, expensive products. But now we come to Internet of Things, you can have connected products, whether it's a scale, whether it's a fitness band, whether it's a coffee maker, a crock pot, many, many other things, health apps. And as long as they are connected to an app, as long as the developer makes the app accessible, then the product also by extension becomes accessible for blind people. So it takes away a lot of the extra engineering costs and specialized work that needs to be done to create a specialized product just for us. Now we can take a mainstream product, have the app, let's make sure the app is accessible, and now everybody can use the same product. And it opens up a lot of possibilities that weren't necessarily easy accessibility projects in the past.
Thank you, JJ. And how about you, Amir?
So with the rest of technologies, definitely Apple, I would say, is on the forefront of it. So Apple Watch coming out, I know that's helping quite a few visually impaired individuals. Also, Microsoft's new HoloLens, which I don't know if they've actually set a release, but I think that's going to hopefully be a game changer also. An interesting thing about the HoloLens, sorry, was someone going to say something?
Nope, the floor is still yours.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, just the HoloLens itself, I think it provides an augmented reality to those that can see, but I think it would also provide a means for those that can't, a way to navigate their local space with having that device on them. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that. And then just it's been mentioned earlier, is just, and something that I continue to reiterate, is that technology will just be, I'm hoping technology will just start to continue to be inherently accessible. So when someone develops a piece of software, it just works out right out of the box. I continue to see that trend, which is good. That's it.
Thank you. And how about you, Sunish?
Yeah, so I would say all these technologies which have been talked about so far are really awesome. I know if these things happen, that will change a lot of things. One thing I would add to that is something for the face recognition. So for social interactions, if I know where my, in a social situation or in a gathering, if I can tell who is who, where is everyone, and the app could actually tell me, what their moods are, or by doing face reading. But all this without looking like a Martian. I mean, the Google Glass might. I don't want to, wear a whole helmet full of devices and start scanning the room.
Right.
It should really. So the challenge is to make it work so that we don't look like a Martian. And then that would be the key technology which could really change. If I'm wearing as part of my button on my shirt or something like that, that's great. It would work seamlessly with other things, and I'd simply have a Bluetooth headset on my earphone, and I can hear what's going on, or according to my settings. So that would be great.
For what it's worth, if you're on developers, we'll have those devices on too.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. It's question of time, but we are in the waiting game right now. So.
And how about you, Brian?
I don't know that I really have anything to add to what people have already said.
Okay. and Dr. Moranville?
Well, you know, I love the previous comment here right before Brian, that I'm ready to put my helmet on so that I can have that 3D effect as I'm walking around. The thing is, you know, innovation is as marvelous and fantastic as it is because it is elusive. Who really knows? If I think back to when I was an undergraduate student 30 years ago, and I'm struggling with getting the materials for my courses in an accessible format, and I'm fumbling around in class taking notes with my slate and stylus, who would have thought that 30 years later, I would have a telephone that is really more than a telephone that I carry around. It has all kinds of accessible technology built into the phone itself, but also allows me to put apps on it. And who would have known 30 years ago what an app even was? And I can plug a Braille display into this phone, and I'm completely self-sufficient and ready to go. So as I look into, you know, the next 30 years, you know, who really knows what will happen? But I think that as we get a better handle on the static environment, like the printed page, we have that mastered now. You know, I can get a book in an audio form or in a Braille form immediately. As we've mastered that, I think that the next stage is the dynamic environment. It is the mobility issue, and knowing once I get to an environment, well, what's there, what's around me. I guess, you know, that's my gut feeling, that's my prediction, and so I'm immediately going to go out and take all of my money and invest in a company that's going to go there.
I thought everyone brought up some interesting points. I wanted to kind of piggyback a little bit on a few of them. One was the Internet of Things. And I always thought this was going to be huge, especially in the home. Right now, if someone wants a fairly modern kitchen, as a person with limited vision, you're kind of at a disadvantage with touch panels everywhere. You know, sometimes I never thought I would, you know, say, can I just have a button or a knob to turn or push? And I just wondered what you guys thought about the Internet of Things specifically, and how you see that potentially playing a role for accessibility universally in the home, not to mention the workplace, but specifically the home. Brian?
Well, I've encountered exactly what you're talking about. A couple of years ago, bought a new washer and dryer, and I can't work it. Well, I can work it as long as I don't play with anything, and take my one setting that it's set on and like it. Because all the controls there's actual buttons and dials, but they're all context sensitive, and presume you can see a display. And this is quite common. My utility company keeps wanting to offer me a new thermostat that's touchscreen. Alarm panels are now touchscreen. But I think JJ hit on something. If they participate in what we're calling the Internet of Things, and your remote control app is accessible, this can be a real game changer for us. So it could go two ways. I mean, it could go where we could get excluded if people get it wrong, or it could go the other way where by default we will be included because of the ability that people want to remote control their homes. And it all depends on the design of the interfaces. So I think now more than ever, it's critical that the awareness really happen.
Yep, definitely. And how about you, JJ?
Can you? What was the?
About the Internet of Things in the home specifically, and is it going to be a hindrance or maybe an advantage moving forward as far as accessibility in the home?
Yeah, I think Brian nailed it on the head. It's going to be an advantage if it's implemented correctly. You know, just like a lot of other, when you look at apps and categories of apps and categories of products, there's often a really good examples of accessibility and really bad examples. You can get an Apple iPhone, which works really well, or you can get a, you know, something like a Windows phone, which doesn't work as well at this point. They're working on it. So, you know, with the right mindset and the right company mindset behind things, the Internet of Things will be just fine. But it's going to take people like us and others to help set that bar and set that standard for companies and help them realize the importance of creating accessible interfaces for products and how that will benefit more people. And I think as more people become, the baby boomers do get older, there will be a bigger push for this as well as more of the population ages and does lose some of their vision.
Thank you, JJ. And how about Amir?
Yeah, so this is actually interesting from my perspective, just being a developer that does work with things like Arduinos and just the very small integrated circuits, is that because of the Internet of Things, I have better access to things that can detect light or detect heat or IR waves or any one of those, or GPS and whatnot. So the more access that, I guess, hobbyists get to some of these smaller devices, we can almost reverse the role and provide devices that, instead of exist in an appliance, is something that can be put on a body to provide an enhanced experience inside of the home. So I can definitely see the concern of touch panels and some of those other interactions. But at the same time, the good thing is that because this is becoming more accessible to developers, we'll be able to think of ways that kind of reverse the role. Instead of trying to build devices that have these kind of sensors in them, we could build devices that we put on ourselves to provide an enhanced experience.
Mm. And Sunish, I know I've spoken to Sunish about this a few times in the past. I know you have a lot of thoughts on it. So
yeah, I think again, partly it comes down to how do you make sure that we make these designers, developers, and including these businessmen who are making the decisions what goes into their product, to make sure that it is accessible to not just for probably just the blind, but I'm broadening the concept here to all disabled folks, because senior population is increasing at a tremendous. So we all know that. How can they address that population and make it a business case rather than just as a, people sometimes think, oh, they have developed this technology at this university, or it's just cool to make something which works for the blind, So it's not just a cool factor, it's our necessity, it's our livelihoods, it's our daily living, we depend on it. So that's what we need to bring awareness, and that's what we need to bring attitude change in the mainstream arena.
I know we're kind of running short on time. We have about 15 minutes left in our technology Global Accessibility Awareness Day panel here. I just wanted to open up to the rest of the group at large about the Internet of Things. Does anyone else have any comments or things they'd like to add to that discussion specifically?
Just very quickly, all I want to say is that we need to consider open standards and the importance of those in this thing. There's no point in saying my thing, connects to a network or whatever, but then I use a proprietary format and I can only talk to my own software. So for instance, say Samsung came out with some app for the iPhone to control their washer or something, then yeah, okay, great, it all works together, but you're still stuck with having to use the Apple platform. You're stuck with using Samsung's own app, which may or may not be accessible. So what we're really looking for is open modularization in the full sense. where, you know, everything, obviously we need to take security into account, but standards are really, really important here. And there's some wonderful things are going on in this sector. I mean, if you look at the car industry and stuff, there's a lot of standards going on now, open standards, in regards to how devices and stuff can talk to cars, you know, so phones and speakers and all that kind of stuff that will, you know, modularize into a car for entertainment or for location tracking and stuff. That's all, you know, being done in an open way, and that's really important.
That's a great point, Michael. And I think that shows that it's possible because the automotive industry is the most proprietary industry you can find on the face of the earth. You know, every manufacturer wants their own special dongle in there to connect your device. And this is the fact that they have found some kind of middle ground here as far as a lot of connectivity in their devices with Bluetooth and 4.0 and other connectivity devices. I think that shows that it is possible if an industry like that can get their act together, or at least start to get their act together. I wanted to kind of close on kind of a more of a fun tone, if you don't mind. So I've done a lot of adaptive technology training, teaching, and blogs and stuff, and I've been asked a lot of crazy things. By-sighted, blind, it doesn't matter. And I was just wondering, to the gentlemen on the line who have done a lot of teaching and advising and consulting, what are some common myths or misconceptions about the implement of adaptive technology and accessibility that you've come across in your profession? Could we start with JJ?
Sure. Well, we'll knock off a couple of the obvious ones at least. Well, the one that I think comes up a lot is, you know, that, well, I don't want to make my app accessible because then it's going to look bad. And of course, we all know that that's not the case. There's a lot of workarounds for that. One of the other things that comes up in this discussion is the tendency of companies, when they think about accessibility, to only think about the user-facing parts of their apps or programs. But in reality, when we're looking at company tools, and especially, you know, larger organizations and companies, their effort really should be universal to make not only the front-facing tools, but also the admin side work as well. Because a lot of blind people might be working for either the company or might be using administrative tools. And by not taking care of the back end, a lot of jobs are sacrificed, a lot of employment opportunities are sacrificed. So it's got to be universally all over the apps and websites.
Thank you. That's so true about no, but it's going to look ugly if I if I make it accessible. I have heard that one before. Yes. And how about you, Michael?
I think from maybe a training of the blind perspective, I mean, look, I'll admit I haven't done too much training at all in my career or anything like that, but one strange thing I do sometimes hear from time to time is the confusion that some blind people get, maybe especially maybe totally blind people who have been blind all their life and who have only just come into computers maybe in their adult life or something like that, where they will find it very hard to disconnect the adaptive technology from the actual device or the computer itself. So for instance, an example, I remember I was at the CSUN conference in California one year, and we were at the Mozilla Firefox booth, and you know, someone walked up and we asked them, so do you browse the web or whatever? And the guy, he was blind, he just went, what, you mean like JAWS? And I was like, what? No, I think you've misunderstood the question entirely. And I can understand why, is because he would have been trained that he uses JAWS or whatever screen reader, and that's his device, that's his computer, rather than appreciating the full environment, you know, and just the fact that the screen reader is just one tool of many.
Yep, definitely. I think there is definitely often that disconnect, and the screen reader is the computer for many blind people that I've met. How about you, Amir?
So I guess my funny anecdotes are actually around trying to explain to someone that can see some of the analogies with regards to being blind and what I just learned from it from being an app developer. One of them would be like for asking a blind person to try to explain what it's like to be blind. Especially if they were born blind, it's like you trying to explain how do you smell through your elbow. It's just not. Yeah, you don't think about it, and then
right.
Put in those terms, then a light bulb goes off. Or another one would be you have to understand that the color black or the color red is not a concept for someone someone that's blind. They don't see black, they see nothing, and those I call that a learning moment. You get a couple of interesting expressions when I've mentioned things like that.
And how about you, Sunish?
Yes, so I would take example of the simplest piece of technology which all of us use all the time, the cane. And many times when we come across folks just pick up my cane. How does it tell you where you are? And of course, and I go to a lot of the IEEE meetings sometimes, and IEEE is the electronic. It's the world's largest professional organization, so there are a lot of chapters. So when I walk into the meetings, and I'm usually the only blind person, of course, and there, and people come up to me and say, "Oh, is this some novel kind of antenna you have developed, or is this some kind of a pointer for your presentation?"
That's one heck of a pointer. Yeah.
I don't thank everyone, but yeah, thank you, Ricardo.
And Dr. Moranville?
I have to concur that I have a lot of questions that are asked about my low-tech cane, where they think that, does it have some kind of mystical or special qualities to it? Where I'm not a developer of technology, I don't get a lot of, those kinds of questions. But what I would like to comment on is coming at this from a humanistic perspective, and it's a thread that's really been throughout all of our comments. I'm walking down the street with my cane, and as far as I can tell, I'm going from point A to point B. I shouldn't appear to look like I'm lost or in any way in need of help. Yet I will be, just overwhelmed by people that are coming up and asking me if I need help with something or else. And a lot of that just comes down to the basic perception that people have of an individual who's blind, that that individual is incapable of caring for themselves, even when they see you effectively caring for yourself. I'm going to end here my comment by opening up a can of worms that's always been a source of amazement to me. That many times people with sight will associate blindness with something else much more than blindness. They associate blindness with a mental disability. And it comes back to an issue that we've been talking about in this discussion, that people deal with their perspectives of the blind, and they've been dealing with these perspectives, for decades in the modern era and even centuries. And that's a real challenge, to be able to overcome the perceptions, even though the technology clearly is the great equalizer.
Yep. And how about you, Ryan? I know you have some good stories, I bet.
I love this story. Several years ago, I was at a restaurant, and I had my folding cane sitting beside me on the chair, and the waitress she asked me how I liked my nunchucks. She thought that they were nunchucks, and it was clearly a folding white cane. I'll never forget that story. But I think one thing, too, is there's such a perception that technology for visually impaired or creating things that are accessible only benefit people with a vision disability. And that's obviously not the case. As we kind of another thread, that universal design is a great, because it designs for everyone. And so, and one example too in this area is many assistive technology type of devices may benefit other people who are not visually impaired. Things like various speech technologies, but for example, some magnification systems are used by companies for inspection, jewelers or microchip companies that are trying to magnify small circuit boards and things are using high definition video magnification systems that are typically used by people with a vision disability, but they're also used into mainstream applications. I know of a gentleman I heard of in Mississippi, I believe, who uses a distance camera to look at the top of trees. He works in forestry, and he needs to examine the health of a tree. He's not visually impaired, but he's using a video magnifier, a distance camera that would primarily be used by someone visually impaired, so he can look up on the screen and zoom in on the top of that tree that's 50 foot up, so he doesn't have to climb a ladder and check the health of the tree. So there's a lot of avenues here for cross-pollination, I guess, between these technologies for vision impaired and in mainstream use.
The best examples I like is the Graham Bell's phone, which was essentially developed so that he can talk to his mother who was losing, hearing. And the second example is the email. Email was also similarly developed for the disabled.
And how about you, Brian? Oh, is Brian still with us? Maybe not. Well, I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight on or this morning, depending on where you are in the world, for speaking with us here at Project StarFish and donating your valuable time to our efforts on this Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I thought everyone was really insightful, and I really enjoyed speaking with you and picking your brains. And I kind of feel like the odd man out here with these luminaries I'm sitting amongst, virtually, of course. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. And we really, really hope to keep in touch and share more stories with you in the future.
I would like to
Thanks for
second
coming.
Ricardo. Thanks, and thank you to our distinguished guests, and thank you also to Ricardo for a fabulous moderation. So yes, thank you everybody. It's been a very interesting and insightful and amusing roundtable. It's been great. So thank you very much, everybody.
It's Hope Paulos, and I also. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, keep going.
So I just wanted to extend my thanks as well. I thought everyone had great comments and great things to say, and I tweeted some of your quotes, and there's definitely people listening out there, and hopefully we will be able to make an impact.
Thank you.
Thank you also to our virtual audience too, who joined us. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we got going eventually. So thank you everybody who listened in.
And this is Nazreen. I'd also like to thank all of you guys, all you on the panel, for accepting my invitation graciously and being our honored guests here today. We couldn't have done it without you guys. It's great to bring all of you guys from the accessible community. You all have different backgrounds and different genres that you're involved in. Come to our roundtable and come and bring all your insight together and become one united community. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, definitely.
Thanks.
Everyone enjoy your days or your nights.
Insert virtual applause. Thank you.
Yeah. Here, I'll unmute and clap.
There we go.
Good. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy
awesome.
the rest of your days.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Bye.
keep in
Thanks,
touch,
everybody.
guys.
Your conference recording has stopped.
Oh my God, that was awesome. Hello?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm here. It's Hope. I'm here.
Yeah, That was fantastic.
It was awesome.
You're probably still being streamed, depending on what you're
No,
streaming.
it turned
No.
off. I heard the soups
Well,
turned
the
it off.
recording stopped. I'm not sure what the YouTube was saying.
Oh, Ackle, cut the stream, please. I think you can hear me. Let me IM so you cut the stream.
Let's see.
I just sent him an IM.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is still on at the moment. Hi, YouTube.
Yeah, we're gonna be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Who joined?
Wow, that was fun.
They
Yeah.
just turned then they just turned it off because it was on.
Okay,
Okay, that was
Good.
awesome, guys. Like
we
really.
can talk now.
Yeah, we can all just talk. It's,
Yeah, I saw that. Ooh, 8:15. I gotta